Hello everybody and welcome to Westcountry CSI December webinar. We've got a couple of our groups talking about what they've been up to and also having a look back at the year we've had in 2020. To start off, we've got Anna, who coordinates our Westcountry CSIers on the Dart. She's had a fantastic year despite everything that's happened, and she's recruited many new volunteers and also done some training for us, which is fantastic.
Hello, my name is Anna and I do water testing on the River Dart and its tributaries for the Westcountry Rivers Trust Citizen Science Programme. I fell into this about 3 years ago when a friend and I went to an open morning on the Dartington estate with WRT's Simon Browning. A group of us were taken through the procedure beside the Dart, and I immediately knew that this was something that would be both a pleasure to undertake and would also provide important information about the resilience or otherwise of our watercourses. I swim in the Dart all year round and it keeps me sane. It is a wonderful antidote to my day job, and I felt that it was important to give something back to the river in some way. I also wanted to learn more about the river and its surrounding flora and fauna. I felt that my knowledge of the fish, the mammals, the birds, the insects, the invertebrates, as well as the trees and plants that grow on its banks my knowledge was severely lacking. I've now been randomly doing river testing for the best part of 3 years. WRT have supported me and provided me with the equipment after a small donation to the Trust. The tests are straightforward and simple to do. You need a camera or a smartphone with a camera, the WRT kit, wellies, and most importantly you need keen eyes, ears, good powers of observation and a little bit of patience. For me, the most enjoyable thing about doing these surveys is to arrive, put your stuff down, open a thermos and then just look and listen. If the test is done in a hurried fashion, then you will always tick no wildlife seen on the report. But if you sit still and wait, the chances are, and if you're lucky, you'll see a dipper or a wagtail, you might even see a kingfisher. The scientific part of the testing is really straightforward. If I can do it, anybody can. In the Dart catchment, we have now managed to get together a group of volunteers who have each been allocated a site on most of the tributaries that run into the east, west and double Dart, mainly, or nearly all above, apart from one, above Buckfast Lee, so the higher Dart. I think it's such a positive thing for each of these volunteers to take ownership of their own site and test it monthly. Over the period of a year, they will then build up a relationship with this stretch of water, and as the seasons change, will notice the plant life and wildlife come and go. How lovely is that? When I first started the surveys, I used to take the paper form with me, complete it by the river, and then transcribe it onto the cartographer website when I got home. I'm now so familiar with the form that I can do most of it from memory when I'm back on my laptop. I suppose that there are many people out here who could do this directly from their camera onto the website if you've got internet where you are. I don't do that. I do take a photograph of my results on the TDI meter and the phosphates, so that I remember when I get home what the results are to upload. Like many of you watching this, I feel at times desperate about the damage that soil erosion and pollution of all types are doing to our rivers and streams and ultimately the sea. After 20 years of swimming in the river, I've seen a steady decline in fish numbers, and many of the trout that I see have signs of disease on their bodies. Just conducting these sites makes me feel that at least somebody, maybe further up in the food chain, will be looking at the information we provide, and it may be used to change and hopefully even improve environmental policy in the West Country and in the UK as a whole.
we have Roger, who coordinates the Friends of Luxilian Valley citizen science group who monitor on the PAR. Now, they've also had a great year this year, and they've managed to do monthly sampling when they can. And Roger's been producing reports, which is fantastic, and has even been picked up by the Environment Agency due to the high phosphate levels. So over to you, Roger.
The red arrow is pointing to a 2-kilometre section of woodland that is known as Luxilian Valley, which is our home territory, but we are interested in the entire river and its tributaries as well. We've got 8 volunteers, and it all began because the Friends of Luxolian Valley has been carrying out otter surveys for many years, and we just wanted to learn more about our river. So we've been surveying monthly from April, sometimes in pairs, sometimes in larger groups, but we've got a very flexible approach. We are currently monitoring at 10 spots, and they are all to the north of the A390 at St Blaise, which is in the bottom right corner of your screen there. We may increase that number. We're aware of other people who are carrying out monitoring to the south of the A390, but as yet we're not in contact with them. Just one second. The Environment Agency divides the catchment. On the left you can see the Upper Par River. This catchment has been heavily affected by tin streaming for centuries and some deeper mining for metals, but also by the China clay industry. The China clay industry is still operating now. As you can see, the classification was moderate for 2019, but until 2011 it was actually poor. So there is an improvement there, but the EA say that mines and abandoned mines are factors preventing it reaching good status. On the right, you can see the lower Par. Now, this part of the river has been heavily altered. In the 19th century, the river was diverted, and the original course was used for a fairly short and short-lived canal, but both the diversion and the canal are used as watercourses now. And this is useful in relieving flooding because the settlements of St Blaise and Par are largely built on the silted up estuary, so they are very vulnerable indeed. And as you can see, this too is graded as moderate, and the EA mention agriculture and the water industry as factors preventing it from reaching good status. This is a scene from the Upper Par River. Now, this is not fashionable Cornwall. This is not the place for tourists or artisanal bakeries or anything like that. But it is in a triple SI and a county wildlife site. There are negative influences here, such as the effects of the tin streaming and mining, China clay, illegal landfill and sewage, and also some fly tipping. And I'll give you an example here. In 2013, we had 2 huge pollution incidents on the Par River, which killed thousands of fish. And one of those was caused by the China clay company Imris, which allowed a chemical called J-flock to get into a tributary stream, which then got into the river. The other incident was caused by Southwest Water because of sewage entering the river from its treatment works at Luxilian, and they too were fined for that. This photograph shows China clay in a stream meeting the main Par River, and the distinction is quite clear, I think. Now, this may not be recent spillages. In fact, it's quite possible that it's China clay in the banks of that stream that are being removed by the higher river levels as we get more rain, but it's still a factor to take into account. This is Luxilian Valley. Now, this 2-kilometre stretch of the river is in a 250-acre World Heritage Site, which is owned and managed by Cornwall Council, and managed quite well, to be fair. It's very picturesque, and it's a very popular place as well. Even got our own mermaid there, which is pretty remarkable, really. We know we have otters in the river, and we see dippers quite frequently. So on the face of it, it looks great, and it is in many ways, but we do have concerns about the water quality in the river, because we have a problem with phosphates, particularly on the lower Par River. The graph on the left shows pretty high levels, but in fact last month we actually recorded the maximum which you can get on the phosphate strips, which is 2,500 parts per billion. But we haven't pinpointed the exact source or sources. Environment Agency data says that farm slurry and sewage are likely culprits there. But it's not all doom and gloom by a long way. There are many grounds for optimism for our river. Westcountry Rivers Trust and the Environment Agency are putting together plans to improve water quality, habitat and fish migration for the river, provided of course they can find funding for that. And there's already a £7.8 million scheme underway on the lower Par. Now this is called the STAR project, which stands for St Austell Resilient Regeneration. And it's mainly to do with flood alleviation measures, but as you can see in the photograph here, it also includes some very interesting things like mending the banks with appropriate materials and so on. And the partners in this are, besides the Westcountry Rivers Trust, Cornwall Council, the Environment, South West University. So we're a very small river and we're a very new group. We have our problems, but I think the future is looking pretty bright. And I'd like to say special thanks to Lydia and to Simon for all their help and their infinite supplies of patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger. That's a great presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Roger? All right, fantastic. Well, that's really interesting, Roger, and really good to highlight what you guys are doing down there, because it's fantastic. And you've also been in contact with the Environment Agency, I know, and they're interested in your monthly reports that you write. So that's fantastic. So I will move on to my presentation, which should be the right one this time. So can everyone see that? Yeah. All right, so what I wanted to do is give a little roundup of 2020 for everybody, because I know it's there's quite a few new and interested parties on this call, and also you know, it's been an eventful year, so I thought I'd give a little rundown. Oh, I just admit someone to the lobby. So the year, as Roger mentioned, was off to a fly with lots of trainings, and here is, you know, some of the groups that we got into contact with and had trainings with, which was really great. There was a lot of enthusiasm at the start of the year, and myself and Simon went around the West Country training these groups up. And I mentioned there at the end an online one, because of course we then ended up with unfortunately the COVID-19 pandemic hit in March. So we did move online. We moved to home working, and it all changed quite a lot. So we had a bit of a topsy-turvy time adjusting to it all. But actually, as I mentioned, you know, online has helped us reach a lot more people. You know, our online event, we were able to reach a wider audience. Instead of just going to one area of the West Country, we were able to reach whoever wished to join us, which was fantastic. And then our online talks, you know, we started them up in June, and we've been able to, you know, get a bit of knowledge transfer going on, because that's a huge part of what we want to be doing with Westcountry CSI. It's not just about sending you out to collect data, but it's also about that knowledge transfer and you know, the trust and our contacts have a huge amount of knowledge on the rivers, so that's incredibly important for us to share that. So we had some great presentations from people like Jenny, who's a ecologist at the Trust, about riparian plants. We had our Mr. T, as we call him, who used to work for South West Water as a chemist, and he did a talk on rivers and the drinking water cycle, which was very interesting. So we've got a few of those up on our YouTube channel. So if you missed any of those, go to the Westcountry Rivers Trust YouTube channel, and you should be able to see them all there. So we had around about 23 people per webinar. It sort of started off quite slow, but increased, and it's really great to see that so many of you are interested, and I think we're hoping to carry this on into the new year, because I think it's a great addition to the Westcountry CSI. So some of the projects that are integrated into Westcountry CSI. So something that's quite recent is that there's projects that actually have Westcountry CSI as part of their funding. So, for example, down in Plymouth, we have the Plymouth River Keepers, which is a project that started the beginning of this year to try and encourage the community to engage with their rivers and do some habitat works and some community works, and you know, we're looking to recruit Westcountry CSI volunteers on those little streams to help us collect data, but also to engage as well. And same with Connecting the Culm. We've got some great citizen scientists there already that we've recruited over the year. I think there's about 17 now that are sampling on the Culm, which is fantastic, and that's going to continue. And that data and information will help that project and go towards its end result. And then we've also got the Preventing Plastic Pollution project, which you may have heard about, which is basically trying to reduce the plastic in the Tamar and prevent it. So we're looking for lots of different communities to help out with that, and CSI will be an important part of that. And we also recently got some funding from North Devon AONB to sample the coastal streams up along that coastline. So we're also looking to recruit more people up on those coastal streams, because in a way the coastal streams are abandoned a little bit by the statutory monitoring. So it's important that we look after them, and hopefully more to come in the future. So let's have a look at our engagement. So I suppose with Westcountry CSI, you know, big part of it is engagement and getting people to know their rivers and getting people interested, but also it's you know, the other side of it is collecting that data and understanding our rivers. So starting off with the engagement. So since the start of 2020, we've had 145 new citizen scientists signed up to Westcountry CSI. Obviously, you can see by that graph that the COVID-19 pandemic obviously meant that we reduced the surveys and we didn't go out, so which shows in the graph. It's interesting when you start to look at the data from the year, how it really sort of highlights those interesting times. And we've had a total of 949 surveys taken, and 119 volunteers have completed surveys this year. And down there is just a little map of all of those. Yeah, sorry, so this is, as Simon mentioned, this is the 4th of December I took this data, so it's not quite the whole year. So you can see that December's very, very small. I'm sure that will grow towards the end of the month. So a little bit about the coverage. So here's a map of all the EA water bodies, which are in grey, and then the dark blue are the water bodies that we are covering as Westcountry CSI. So of the 854 water bodies, we're covering 119 of them at the moment, which is 14%. We're obviously hoping that we can get somebody in each of those catchments, because it's incredibly important that we're looking after all of it as a trust. and it also allows us to highlight those areas that we might not have, noticed before, and the data and the information that we can collect can really help us target intervention and target some of the projects that we'll be working on. So having a little look at the data. So this is for everything. So everything for 2020, all the data on the phosphates, the total dissolved solids, the turbidity and the temperature. So for the total dissolved solids, sorry, I have taken out the results from estuaries because they do slightly warp the results, because of course estuaries having salt in them have a huge TDS value, so I have taken them out, but you can see that the River Inny there in September, huge value. The Inny does suffer from very high levels of total dissolved solids, but overall, it's fairly regular results with a few anomalies here and there. And the phosphate values, as Roger mentioned, that 2,500 parts per billion at Cambridge's on the Par River, which was recently collected in November, that's a really standout value, and it's not great to see that. So hopefully it can be investigated and understood a little bit better. The turbidity values, obviously, that sort of links in with rainfall, as we mentioned. The rain causes higher rates of sedimentation off the surrounding fields, and that can increase the turbidity. So January, February, March, when we had a bit of rainfall, you can see high turbidity values, and then we also had some high rainfall events in August and September, which shows in the data. The temperature is interesting because, of course, higher temperatures have a huge impact on the ecological sort of status of the river. So the fish and the inverts are severely affected by higher temperatures in particular, and also that our fisheries team look at the low winter as well. The fish, they really need lower temperatures for spawning, so it's very interesting to see how those temperatures are changing. So if we have a little look at the map of the data, so these are averages for each of these water bodies, so we can see where we're getting those higher phosphate values. Down in the area of Plymouth River Keepers, you can see a little red mark, so we are getting high phosphate values from that area. Urban streams, so it's getting quite a lot of different inputs into it. You can see the Par River there, as Roger mentioned. And the same for total dissolved solids. So you can see highlighted the areas where we're seeing the highest values for those. And that's the Inny there, in the yellow, which really stands out. And then finally turbidity, which actually in general is very good for our rivers, with the odd high value. I think is it's generally what we see. So if we have a look at the environmental observations, so problem plant species, obviously Himalayan balsam really stands out. Unfortunately, you see it a lot of areas nowadays. It's a plant that has spread incredibly quickly, not least because it grows very well next to river systems and its seeds ping everywhere. You've probably seen it happen, and basically enters the waterway and off it goes. And I think it can lay dormant, those seeds, for around 2 to 3 years. So, even when you're pulling it out, which I've done a fair amount of, you can sometimes feel like you're going backwards because you pull it out one year and it comes back even more voracious the next. The other sort of plants that we're seeing, Japanese knotweed is another one which isn't great at all, but you do often find it along our waterways. Hemlock is in the other category. Hemlock water dropwort people highlight. However, this is a native species and is part of the ecosystem. I know it does have poisonous roots, and definitely you shouldn't be touching it when you're out and about. However, it is a natural part of the ecosystem. And then on to wildlife. We're seeing a good range of wildlife generally. However, we have, we try to update the survey form every year, and one thing that really highlighted to us is that people see a lot of dipper, the bird, the dipper, and we see that a lot in the other categories. So we think actually instead of having mink, we probably have dipper on there. So that's probably a change that will come in 2021. So here we have some of the pollution sources. So, as we are a rural area in the West Country, we do see a lot of the riverbank, seeing the soil runoff and the farm animal access to cattle access to river, and also because a lot of the sample points are next to roads. The road runoff is probably the highest one we see, and evidence as well. Litter obviously is quite high up there, unfortunately. Foam is an interesting one because foam can be both natural and a sign of pollution. So naturally, it might come off the peatland and the moorland. So if your river comes off Bodmin or Dartmoor, then it's more likely to be natural. Whereas, if it's foam that you're seeing maybe at the bottom of the catchment, then it may well be something that's unnatural and worth noting down. So it's an interesting one. We've had a discussion about taking it off the form before, but I think overall it's a good indicator. So finally, a big thank you. It's been an incredible effort this year, and although it's been topsy-turvy year, very hard for a lot of people, we hope that being by the river has given you a bit of balance and perspective this year. So a huge thank you for all the data you've collected. It's invaluable and incredibly useful, and we're hoping next year that we can give you scorecards for those catchments that have got enough data. We'll be producing scorecards for them. And also, I just wanted to say that we're always looking for feedback. Don't be afraid to tell us if you think something can be improved or changed. Certainly every year we try to look at the survey form and make changes and improvements. So if you think that anything could be changed, then do let us know. Same with the kit. We try and make the kit as easy to use, as reasonably priced and simple as possible. But if there are other things that you've come across, then please do let us know. We're happy to have a look. And also our ways of working. If you think, well, actually I want more information or more contact, then please do let us know. We're looking at further expanding the scheme, and part of that's maybe changing it to more cyclical. So we'll be training at the start of the year, then giving out kits, then allowing people to collect data and then reporting at the end of the year. So it might be a little bit more structured, which would help myself and Simon. So Simon is on the call, so we're now opening up to any questions. So I'll just stop presenting. And okay, so Ed, please go ahead.
We've got a new group starting on the River Sid, which is wonderful. We've got a real problem on the Sid with three-cornered leaf and Triquelium. I wonder, do other catchments have the same problem in the southwest?
Interesting. I've personally not heard of it, but if anyone else has come across it, please do say. Oh, Brian, if you please go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, we've certainly got three-cornered leaf in the catchment area. It's quite prolific, actually, but not necessarily right on the river. But certainly throughout the valley, it's absolutely everywhere. So, yeah, but I don't think it's causing a problem on the river. It smells wonderful in the spring.
The trouble is, it's blotting out the wild garlic in our area.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's blotting out almost everything. It hasn't managed to quell the Himalayan balsam yet, but get the feeling because it comes out much earlier, it may be a match for the Himalayan balsam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's nice. So was there any other questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just because I think that we might get this, what you do, the into schools, into educational. Governor at Quebec.net, and I've talked to the geography and science teachers, and they're really interested in getting the kids involved in the testing. Is this something that you've looked at before?
Yeah, so it's kind of been ongoing with CSI, that we've always you know, popped into schools here and there to sort of get the kids involved with it, and I have developed a school's CSI form, so it's a little bit more you know, primary school age aimed at. We have got an education officer, so Shona has, you know, regularly goes into schools. She doesn't necessarily focus on CSI, but you know, we do have that element. I think, you know, it's a mix of time and obviously with the current situation, trying to work out the best way of doing it. But it's, you know, we're very keen to have that integration, and we've talked about having like a schools network, so they almost have a separate part of the cartographer where they can enter their data, and maybe they can compare it to other schools and see how that's, so that integrates. But yeah, it's on our list.
It'd be really good, because the school's right next to the River Dart, and I know they have a problem with littering as well, problems from the school, so it'd be a really good education to understand. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem, Gillian. Please, you know, if you let them know the CSI email address, and you know, they can get in contact if, and you know, we can arrange something.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So we've got, I think, Andre, do you have your hand up?
Just a quickie, really. Are there any plant eradication programs sort of operational, if you like? Obviously, at the moment, there are lots of people who are furloughed and or who find themselves out of work at the moment. So it might be an opportunity, I think, where you might be able to get some volunteers to tackle, or help tackle at any rate, some of the issues.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, with the eradication, I don't know if our ops team sometimes get involved with that, but certainly I don't think Westcountry Rivers Trust, Simon, you might be able to correct me, but we've not directly been involved in eradication. Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Got it.
But yeah, that's one of the things really that I think a group is well set up to do, because certainly something like Himalayan balsam as well is best tackled from the top of the catchment down. Otherwise, you're kind of just, you know, almost wasting your time. So hopefully that's something that, you know, we can help support people with in the new year. It's always best done sort of in the spring as the plants come up and before they start, you know, before the seed pods mature.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because those seed pods are dangerous. John, you have your hand up.
Good morning, everybody. A new joiner to the group. Very interesting indeed. If I see an incident of pollution or something, what authority do I have to challenge that incident if there's somebody present? I saw extraction taking place from a farmer's vehicle, not so far away from where I do my sampling. What authority do I have to challenge that that incident of water extraction? First of all, is it an incident? Is it reportable to the EA? And where do I stand?
It's worth reporting it, because the EA have, they need an extraction license, so the EA will know whether, or should know whether they have an extraction license, and if they don't, then they will investigate it further. So the 0800 80 70 60 line is the EA emergency hotline, and you can ring that, and they they will investigate it further. And you can also give them your email address and they will follow up for you, let you know what happens. In terms of your own jurisdiction, I'm not sure. I mean, I would generally, you know, advise caution with that sort of thing, because you know, I'd say that you don't want to create an incident or something, you know. But if you know the person, then definitely worth you know, bringing it up and asking it whether it's licensed.
Second question: who's responsible for the banks of the water, of the river or the stream? Who is responsible for maintaining them? Is it the EA or the landowner?
It's a good question. I know that it's quite complicated, and I think it depends on the place. I know that in our Plymouth area, one of the ladies down there has done a huge amount of research into who owns what part of the river, and yes, it's fair to say it's incredibly complicated, and I think it depends on where it is. Yeah, I suppose landowners generally feel like they own the land, the bank side, but I don't know whether that's you know, legally binding or not.
Do we have any legal advisors?
I don't think so. Not in the Westcountry Rivers Trust. No, unfortunately not.
Okay, thank you. That's me.
Neil? You're able to find the unmute button, Neil?
Apologise. First time user as well. In answer to John's query, there are the farming rules for water which put the onus on the landowner to look after the riverbank, and he should not allow poaching or erosion of the bank by livestock for more than 20 metres in any one section of the river. So if you see cattle, whatever, livestock access to the water and they're causing more than a 20-metre wide problem on the bank, or collapse of the bank or whatever, then that is actually a non-compliance in agricultural terms.
Great, thank you very
much. I don't
much.
know if that's useful. But...
No, that's great. No, that's great. I didn't know that, so that's really interesting.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
So, are there any further questions? No, okay, well, yeah, thank you everybody for coming along. You know, we hope that you have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and that we start up again in earnest in the new year, and hopefully next year we can get out and do a few more events and some face-to-face events, which some of you may come across, myself and Simon. So yeah, thank you very much for coming, everybody, and yeah, have a lovely Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia.